I came from Venezuela 8 years ago. And when I came here in large part seeking freedom, right? Because Venezuela had been destroyed from a democracy, from a wealthy nation to a really poor and totalitarian state. And I saw that there were a lot of Americans who were really ignorant about what was going on in the rest of the world. And not of their own fault, by the way. It's just because they never learned about it.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, there were people who were being lied to and deceived by politicians to support ideas that destroyed countries like mine, like Venezuela. I remember every single actor, college professor, an American elite who went to Venezuela to whitewash Hugo Chávez. And I think every Venezuelan remembers. And we will not forget. So if Venezuela is ever free, I can assure you that people will be held accountable because a lot of these people were bribed. A lot of these people got money to support Chavez. I mean, Chavez, he had a lot of money to do these things. That's part of what he used the oil money to buy goodwill around the world, buy votes at the United Nations, at the Organization of American States, buy spies from Cuba that he sent free oil to, politicians and lobbyists in America too. And so, there's people convicted. There's an American professor in the University of Miami who was taken by the FBI not a few years ago because he was receiving money from the Venezuelan government. This is a dictatorship, right, that you're supporting.
Chavez gives way to Maduro, who still is in power today. What has happened? So walk us up to the present. So you have Chavez who comes in with this populist, socialist redistribution thing. There's still some wealth to be extracted from the society. But then Maduro follows. And how did that change the character or what's being done to the country?
Well, it only changed really who was in charge. It changed from being an autocratic regime in the sense that there's only one person in charge, that was Hugo Chávez. Now it's really an oligarchy of several people in charge. Maduro is not the only one calling the shots in Venezuela. It's Diosdado Cabello, it's Jorge Rodriguez and his sister Delcy Rodriguez. They're the two Rodriguez siblings, who, by the way, are the children of a convicted killer in Venezuela from the 90s. They've always been resentful about this. It's several people. And these are people that became a drug cartel later on. Chavez was involved from the start. But I think a lot of people make the mistake of saying that after Chavez passed, Maduro is the one who destroyed Venezuela. Because Chavez happened to pass in the moment right around when the economy was fully collapsing. And that was just a coincidence. It was not that there was a change of policies. Chavez is the one who imposed the price controls. Chavez is the one who took over private companies. Chavez is the one who printed money from the central bank to pay for spending and ignited inflation. Maduro didn't change a thing. I remember the moment Chavez died, I was in school, and we get the news that he dies, and school is immediately dismissed. All the parents come pick up their kids because you don't know what's going to happen. We were pretty happy. I was pretty happy. Yes, because he died, but really because we hoped that the moment would be a change for the country, right?
Yeah.
When many other dictators have died, regimes have changed. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. I think also a lot of people underestimated Maduro. Maduro came into power sounding like a really ignorant, stupid man, right? Who confused words, who made many mistakes that seemed like he was really, one of the stupidest people in the country. Everybody mocked that he was a bus driver. It was jokes all about him. But who's really laughing now, right? He's been over 10 years in power. Soon he's going to turn more years in power than Chavez himself at the start before his death. And he's cheating in the elections. He has the control over everything in the country. So I think we underestimated him. And perhaps it was all for show, really.
One of the stories that our kids are being told, especially your classmates in Columbia, Columbia University, is that the real problem is colonialism and imperialism. That the reason why Venezuela got poor from being rich isn't socialism or Hugo Chavez. It's because of U.S. sanctions and the U.S. basically not allowing any of its trading partners to do business with Venezuela, and that colonialism and the like shadow of Spanish rule. This has left these deep scars, not just in Venezuela, but in South America more broadly. And so really it's Western European, Anglo, capitalist elite power that is the oppressive force, and that's who we should be blaming for what's gone wrong. How do you respond to that? And do you think that's a fair characterization of the criticism?
Oh, that's absolutely a fair characterization. I mean, Chavez even blamed our blackouts on iguanas eating cables and Marco Rubio hacking our electric system from Miami. That's, we all laughed about that.
He's got those small hands, so he can really get in there and wire it.
I think the U.S., if anything, has not done much about Latin America.
What about the CIA? That's
what Chavez said. Yeah, it's the CIA.
There's a book. What is the book? Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Who claims that the CIA has run operations to mess with South American countries, to install people like Pinochet in Chile, and that we've been messing around down there. It's our fault.
I'll tell you, though, the whole thing about the coup in Chile in 1973 was just declassified because it's been a little over 50 years now. So it was all declassified, and the CIA had no idea of what was going on. It was full internal. So,
really?
This has been fully debunked. It was not the United States. It was internally in Chile. It's true that the U.S. was happy about it, but it's not true that the U.S. caused it to happen, which is two very different claims, right? But, going into the topic of Venezuela, they'll blame sanctions, they'll blame colonialism. It's a myth by the far left who wants to blame everything that happens in Venezuela on external reasons. You know what is a U.S.-centric, imperialist view? To think that everything that happens around the world has something to do with America.
Yeah, that's the truth.
People around the world have agency too, and they make mistakes, and they are bad, and they're good people too.
One of the things that's always been so strange about that mindset is that Marxism is a German and French philosophy. It is an export philosophy of Western European elites. It is not an inherent South American or global Southern philosophy. It's something that was maybe the most ideologically imperialist force in all of human history, exporting communism. I mean, how do you understand the role of the Soviet Union in influencing the ideology explicitly in South America?
Well, they did it when they took over Cuba, right? After they took over Cuba, Cuba was the one in charge of exporting it to the rest of Latin America. Most Americans don't know that Cuba actually tried to militarily invade Venezuela in the 1960s. It was the Macuto incident. It's one of the main reasons Cuba was expelled from many international organizations. It was not because of the CIA or America. It was because of Venezuela. And Venezuela had always been on the forefront on the fight against communism before it became itself as an aligned nation with Cuba. And for Cuba, it was very important to take over Venezuela in the 1990s when they did with Chavez, because the Soviet Union had fallen, and they were under what was called the special period, right? They were starving because they had no more subsidies from the Soviets. When Chavez gets elected, the special period ends in Cuba.
So wait, just describe what this means, the special period. What does that mean?
1991, exactly. The Soviet Union falls, and Russia doesn't send any more subsidies to nations like Cuba around the world. And a substantial portion of the revenues from of the Cuban government that they used to maintain their regime were from Russian subsidies. When those subsidies end, there's a new immigration wave to the U.S. in the 90s. It's Mini Mariel, I think it's called, after the Mariel boat lift. What happens is people begin starving to death in Cuba, and more people leave, and there's no medicine, everything. And Fidel sees that opportunity to take over Venezuela with Chavez, finances his campaign, supports him. Chavez goes to Cuba many times before being elected. And when he takes power, Venezuela starts sending full oil tankers at no cost to Cuba that then Cuba resells on the international market. And that's how Cuba has been maintaining its island since 1999.
The thing that is so strange to me about so many elements of that is the Soviet Union was basically a petrol state. That's basically
they replace one petrol state for another.
And then you have Venezuela as a petrol state. So you have a global left who claims to be about justice, and now the latest version of this is the climate. We need to have global communism so that we can control industrial production in the name of climate change. But the entire ideology globally seems to have been subsidized by pumping oil out of the ground to fund dictators.
That's very funny, but it's true.
Right? I mean, am I missing something here?
No, it's absolutely true. But, interestingly, it's become much harder for Venezuela now because the socialists are not good at managing anything, right? And that included the oil company, and now Venezuela's not producing very much oil at all. And so the way these regimes are now financed is actually through drug trafficking. The Venezuelan regime is led, all of its leaders are part of what's called the cartel of the suns. They make the drugs, cocaine mainly, in Colombia, but also in Venezuela, and they use Venezuelan airplanes to fly it, on boats, to fly it all over Central America, the Caribbean. It gets to Mexico, and then from Mexico comes to the United States. The nephews of Maduro himself were arrested by the DEA in Haiti several years ago, I think in 2015, and they were imprisoned in New York, where we are. And Joe Biden released them back to Venezuela. We had the two nephews of the dictator who were themselves trafficking like a ton of cocaine to the U.S.
I remember a few years back seeing that one of Fidel Castro's, I think, nephews was taking selfies on yachts.
Oh, yeah.
That's the other piece of the puzzle that seems to be pretty common, which is these... how much was Hugo Chávez worth at the time of his death?
Probably billions of dollars. And it's funny because there are videos of Chávez saying being rich is bad with a Rolex on his wrist. It's as if they're mocking you with what they're saying. But in every socialist dictatorship, the dictator has become a rich man, right?
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.